Good evening. You know how I always like to talk about dualities because yin and yang is the ultimate duality, and it symbolizes completion, the merging of the divine masculine and the feminine masculine in equal strengths, full dynamic divine male and full dynamic divine female, yin and yang, again with the singularity in the middle, the dot from which everything came. Quantum physics will tell you that the earth came from a singularity. It's something like from nothing to everything, or from nothing to something, but actually nothing isn't appropriate. We didn't arise from nothing because the singularity contained the duality, yin and yang, the completion, the wholeness. So I spend a lot of time wondering. I always like to get dualities, all the dualities we could go through: love, hate, male, female, tall, short, fat, skinny, any of the dualities. I don't need to go through them because they're countless, innumerable. Thank you. So the dualities are infinite, I guess. Probably would be fair to say there's an infinite amount of dualities. But, I've heard a lot of people say, I like to get opposites, because actually opposites, as we know, are one and the same, just different energies, different expressions. So, but it's love and hate, it's the duality, it's on the same circle. So without one, there couldn't be the other, right? That's basically, without knowing about darkness, we couldn't know about daylight. Without knowing about death, without knowing about life, we couldn't know about death. Without knowing about death, so this goes on again. Anyway, I wanted to get the opposite because I like to go to the dualities. I like to go to the dualities for a lot of reasons. One reason is because it's just fun. It's entertaining to me. So, okay, what's the opposite of this? Okay, what's the antonym instead of the synonym? Synonym means similar. It means the same meaning with a different word. Antonym means the opposite polarity, the opposite meaning. So I looked a lot about fear. So what's the opposite? What's diametrically opposed to fear? Fear, and a lot of people say love, and I thought, well, love can be, there's romantic love, there's all kinds of love. And then I went back to an old concept, agape, A-G-A-P-E, universal love, agape, true divine love. So fear and agape, or how about fear and freedom? That's the one that I liked, and I want to talk about it today. Fear is the realm that most of us operate out of most of the time. If I look around the world, I see fear, like 90% fear. Fear of this, fear of that, fear of the unknown, fear of the known, fear of what will happen, fear of what might happen, fear of what could happen. We fear all these things, and most of the time, 90% of the time, our fears never come to fruition. What we fear the most doesn't come true. So why do we spend all this time in fear? And what would be the productive way of this? What duality from fear would be the most conducive to our soul path, our life purpose? And I came up with freedom. I didn't like love because agape love comes closest, but most people don't know what agape love is. They don't know the word agape. But love is romantic love and platonic love, and so I thought, oh, love is kind of ambiguous. Love covers too many. Maybe it's overused, right? I love you. That's pretty funny. But freedom. Now there's the polarity of fear. So I'm urging all of you. I chose to be free. I chose to live in freedom. I chose to resonate with freedom. I chose to project freedom. I chose to attract freedom. I chose to support freedom. And there's an old saying, freedom isn't free. Yeah, it takes effort. Fear is you just can fall into fear, right? But to truly be free takes huge effort. So is it easier to be fearful or easier to enjoy freedom? Freeful. Freedomful. Freedomful? Which is easier? Well, of course it's easier to fall into fear because our ego wants to take us to fear so that it can provide solutions. It likes to keep us off balance, And balance is the underneath everything, underneath the yin and the yang and the polarities is balance. So you balance fear with freedom. There's the pendulum swings towards fear and freedom. Fear and freedom. Fear and freedom. So you want to enter the realms of freedom. And in order to do that, what life has shown me, what life has taught me, is that you can't be free, you can't know freedom until you rid yourself of fears. And since I said that, I think 80 to 90% of all human activity is generated, is produced, is conducted through fear. Our reactions, our willingness to accept change. We fear change. Most people do. I welcome change. All things must change. Yes. All things must change. That's a dictum. That's a universal truth. One of the few. All things must change. So to embrace freedom, you have to rid yourself of fear. And what's some of the steps? What's some of the methodology? What's some of the ways? What's some of the methods to reach a stage of freedom? To reach a mind, a being, a mirror that reflects freedom instead of fear. What's the steps? Well, you have to dismantle, you have to destroy, you have to deconstruct, you have to take apart fear. So the old saying, face your fears. Yes, that's where you start. You look at your fears and you say, oh, I'm fearful of this, or fearful of that, I'm fearful of death, I'm fearful. Your list for fear is probably a lot longer than your list from freedom. For freedom. For freedoms. There's just as many freedoms as there is fears, and we don't really get that because we spend so much time focused on fear, or unfocused. Because that's the key. If you focus on freedom, you have to discard your fears. So how do you do that? Easier said than done? Probably. But you have to spend time. You have to spend time sitting with your fears. Okay, I'm afraid of that. And take it to its conclusion. That's what you do with fear. Fear is just kind of vague, undefined, cloudy, misty concept. So that's where clarity comes. What's the use for clarity? Clarity to be clear, to experience consciousness. If you're in a state of consciousness, if you're 100% in the state of consciousness, you have no fear. There's no room for fear. You can't be clear enough to reach consciousness while entertaining fears. So that idea, face your fear, look it in the eyes. Say, okay, sit with it, meditate with it. Look in the eyes, say, okay, let's create the worst case scenario. Okay, if this fear comes to fruition, if this fear comes to fulfillment, what's the consequence? What will the fear lead to? What's the worst thing that you can imagine that the fear would lead you to? And when you take it out of its ambiguity, when you take fear and you really look at it, you analyze it, you use the jhana yoga, the path of knowledge. You use your brain. You use your brain to take you from information to knowledge, to ultimate wisdom. So you go through the same process with your fear. Just take it to the end. Take it as far and use your imagination. What's the worst thing that could happen in this fear? So usually at the end of the culmination of all fear is death. And when you start looking at death, the biggest fear, probably the ultimate fear, if you take that and you deconstruct it, you look and you realize the dualities again. Without death, there can't be life. Without the old, the old, if you can't help in the new world, get out of the old. Thank you, Mr. Bob Dylan. If you can't help in the old world, get out of the, if you can't help in the new world, get out of the old world. Okay? So project your fears, follow your fears, let your fears blossom to the worst possible scenario, the worst possible alternative that your overactive imagination can create for you. And then sit with it and say, okay, death. Probably this is the root of all fears. Well, you have to really understand the duality. Without death, there couldn't be life. You have to understand that duality. And then you recognize that death, all things must pass. All things die. And you can have resurrection. Resurrection without passing. You pass. And when you think about life, think about it for a second. Actually, once you are born, you can look at life. This is the process of examining fear. You can look at life as once you're born, you entered into the process of dying. Right? Every second that passes is 1 second closer to the ultimate end. And most of us, we don't know. Most of us have no clue. And that's a beautiful thing. But so sit with fear, embrace fear. That's what dark night of the soul is. Facing your fear and understanding that dualities, understand through facing your fear, the dark night of the soul. When you come out of that, you realize that dualities, love and hate, wellness and sickness, fear and freedom, exist at the same time. And the best example of this is I can use is do you believe in free will or destiny? And they ask me, free will? Sure, of course. Destiny? Certainly. So how can I entertain two diametrically opposed? How can I take love and hate and say, oh, it's the same thing. It's just a degree of expression, right? How can I entertain my mind that, yes, there's free will exists, but there's also destiny? Huh? How's that possible? Well, that dark night of the soul, facing your fears, takes you to reconciling diametrically opposed concepts, which means love and hate. Same thing. Just like I said, fear or freedom. Yes, we think of them as opposites, polarities. But what it truly is, polarities, is there's no such thing as two, it's all one. It's all one. So this sphere, three-dimensional sphere, it looks like poles apart. One side of the diameter and the other side of the diameter of the circle. But when you are able to sit and say, yes, life and death, when you can accept polarities, that comes after the dark night of the soul. That comes after. And my experience was that first, after the dark night of the soul, when all the fears came out, and yesterday was Halloween, so what a perfect day for fears, the dark side. So the steps were dark night of the soul, and then came, for me, past lives, and I pictured every life I've ever experienced. Went to the Akashic Records, space-time continuum, and access all my lifetimes. I saw everything. And that's when I started to embrace ordinariness, because most of my life, I wasn't some king or something like that. I was a peasant, more than likely, 9 times out of 10. I wasn't on the upside of the scales. So, and then went into opposing, the understanding duality, and finding the unity in duality. And I mentioned before, there's always options. Look for your options, face your fear, experience freedom.